Hi everyone. Pardon me. While I had a little script going because I want to say a few words of gratitude. So I may be looking at my other monitor because I can't flip my script over here for some reason. But good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know we have people from all over the world joining us. So thank you all so much for taking the time to come to our last event of the year for women who submit. We did it through a grant from the California Arts Council. So thank you so much. And thank you, Xochitl, for giving the space for our chapters to come together and do this reading. So at the end of this year, I will be stepping down as the chapters director, and Thea Pueschel will be your new chapters director. So for those of you who are members and those of you who are chapter leads, it's been a pleasure to work with you. And I'll be sending an official email letting you know how to stay in touch because I'm not going anywhere. I'm also the chapter leads for the Long Beach, California chapter. So I am around. I love this community. And it's been a pleasure to serve these last 4 years as chapters liaison first and then chapter lead. I started as the chapters liaison under Ryan Granados. She was the chapter lead, and together we started the Europe and the Austin chapters. So Joy and Ramona, if you're on, it's been a pleasure to work with you. And then around this time last year, the Waterloo chapter joined us. Hi, Kelly. I saw you earlier. I think you're on there. And then recently over the summer, it was Detroit with Judy and Dilys as the chapter lead. So lastly, our New York chapters and our West LA chapters were here before me. But it's also been a pleasure. I love working with Molly and Minerva, and now with Jasmine and Nicole in West LA. And Jasmine is also one of our readers today. So thank you all so much for for the work that you do. It really means a lot to um, to have our voices just be represented in and be seen in literature and media in general. So Thea and I chose the submissions blindly. And I'll say that we agreed on like 90% of them. And I say 90% of them because we were supposed to choose 10, but I had nine and Thea had like eight. And so like we were pretty much on point with all of them. And then we're like, okay, who are we going to select? So that was it was definitely like a really fun process. And if we have time at the end, we can talk about it. All the pieces were phenomenal. I wish we could have, chosen all of them, but these 10 were the 10 that stood out to us the most. So we look forward to hearing you. And Thea, I'll hand it over to you.
Hello. Well, as you know, I'm no longer going to be chapters liaison and we'll need a second. I just want to take a moment to talk about the organization of Women Who Submit. We're all encouraged to handle different areas of leadership. So I've served as open mic person. I've served as the blog managing editor, and now I've served as the chapter liaison. And it's just been such a rich and rewarding experience. So I'd like to encourage you because there will be positions opening up in the new year in different areas because we like to rotate to keep everyone involved and also to give other people opportunities in leadership roles. So just be on the lookout for that. Um, and what else? As Lucy said, it's been a pleasure. Lucy and I have been friends almost since I started with Women Who Submit. We've been each other's feedback partners. We've been accountability buddies. And so, that's what this is great for. Hopefully, there's an opportunity for you to meet new people here today so that maybe you can develop those relationships in the future. Of course, there's no obligation to become someone's accountability buddy or feedback person. So I'm going to go ahead and read the Los Angeles land acknowledgement, and I will include a few links for you to check out. And since we are an international group today, I'm going to focus on sharing the links from the website regarding books that you can read by Tongva authors. So Women Who Submit acknowledges the Tongva, Gabrielino, Kish, and Chumash people, past, present, and future, for their stewardship of the Los Angeles County region of California, where Women Who Submit was founded, and whose sacred lands were stolen for the benefits of white supremacy on these unceded lands. We recognize land acknowledgements are meaningless if they do not include current struggles for land and autonomy by Native peoples and are void of action. Colonization continues to impact all of our communities, countries, and geopolitical systems. As of fall of 2024, we recognize the particular struggles in Palestine, Sudan, and the Congo. Women Who Submit was founded on the principle of advocating for the most vulnerable to secure basic human rights for all and will continue to do so. In 2025 and beyond, Women Who Submit commits to making contributions to the Tongva, Taraksa, Paksa, I'm sorry for brutalizing that, Conservancy, which works to receive land back, create community and housing for Native peoples, practice traditional ceremonies, establish a Native archive, and rematriate the land. If you'd like to join us in this effort, we encourage you to engage with the Tongva Taraksat Pax of Conservancy. And I'll put the link in there, and along with links to Cindy Alfitri and Jessica Calderon and Cassandra Lopez's work. And I'll hand it back over to Lucy to share our first writer.
Thank you, Thea. So without further ado, we are going to start our reading. And the first person up is Barbara Dix from our Europe chapter. And please note that we call it the Europe chapter because they Joy is based in France, but the members are all over Europe. So that's why we don't have like a specific region. So from the Europe chapter, Barbara Dix, her flash fiction has been published in Smoke Long Quarterly, Ghost Parachute, Fracture Lit, and anthologized in the Bridgeport Prize in 2022. Bath Flash Fiction Awards and Best Microfictions of 2025. She's from Washington, D.C., but has been living in Paris, France for over 20 years. Take it away, Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say a quick word of background about my story before I begin. I workshop this with Smoke Long Quarterly, and I had gotten stuck. And so they provide a sort of a digital wheel to help you give you a prompt for settings. And so the digital wheel gave me the setting of a female penitentiary. And that started me down a rabbit hole of researching what it's like to be in a penitentiary as a woman, and what among the many interesting things that I found out that in some places outside of the United States, they host beauty pageants. And so that really gripped my imagination. So I wrote a story trying to envision what that might be like. It's called Beauty Queens in the Hive, and it was published in Wigleaf in March 2025. Beauty Queens in the Hive. The buzzing starts when we hear the news. We don't spend much time wondering about the sound because we're too busy laughing. A beauty pageant? What the actual fuck? Our laughter crackles through the iron corridors, and for a moment we are warmed. There's no beauty in the hive. Here we got pus-colored cinder blocks, pissy fluorescent lights that turn us into hags, the gunmetal gray of the yard, and the slap-hard faces of our keepers. Wayward teeth and plum-bruised eyes. Things that scream over and over, you have no right to beauty, which we already know, have known for most of our lives. So we laugh until our stomachs seize and our ears ring, and we get so dizzy we lean against the cold, hard walls as if they are our friends. But after the laughter wanes, the buzzing continues. At first we think it's an electrical problem or an insect infestation. Then we realize it's the pageant. Any mention of the word sets off a rattling buzz that lasts for hours. We feel it vibrating in plastic lunch trays and metal doors, rising through our rubber-soled shoes to shudder up our legs and jostle our hip bones. It clatters around in our heads, shaking loose strange and pointless thoughts. The lipstick color we used to wear, morning frost, or the scent of the perfume we stole from the drugstore in the 6th grade. We become noisier, laugh louder, act wilder, but some of us sit on the thin mattress of our bunk or hunker down in a corner, fingers pressed in our ears, eyes winched shut. We learn more. The pageant is anonymously sponsored and has been met with great success in other countries, whatever that means. We don't have to participate, but if we do, we'd better not put even a pinky toe out of line if we know what's good for us. We are a test case. Hairstylists will come, professional makeup artists. We can pick outfits from barrels of used clothes. We may invite family members, if they'll come. At this, one of us claps her hands over her ears, moaning, and is immediately thrown out. She has 3 daughters who never visit. The rest of us fall silent as stones. We cannot wear belts. There is no prize. A catwalk is erected in the yard. A short, rotund man glides in to teach us how to walk. His name is George, but we dub him Thief because he is that smooth. We are not allowed stiletto heels, only flip-flops. But Thief says it doesn't matter. Just throw our shoulders back, fix our gaze on a point in the distance, put one foot in front of the other. We walk. Hands off, he shouts, and we uncurl our fists. Move like a river, ladies. And though we scoff, we try to imagine what it might be like to live easy in our bodies, to flow. We do not tell him about the buzzing, but he seems to know. When it gets to be too much, he comes over and holds our faces with his eyes. The pageant has kicked up a ruckus and the community is outraged. Protests take place outside the hive's walls. We watch social media reels in the rec room. Some people carry signs saying things like, penitence, not pleasure, and there's nothing beautiful about crime. But others read, rehabilitation, not objectification. Stop the exploitation of female inmates. We laugh so hard we would roll on the floor, except it might mean getting booted from the pageant. Pageant day comes. Our keepers watch as we pull on street clothes. For the first time in months, years, decades. A silky midnight blue dress, a pair of cutoffs, a gauzy skirt that flares when we twirl, a charcoal gray pantsuit, corduroy overalls, jeans, and a plain white t-shirt. The buzzing shakes the hive like a 5-alarm bell, but we don't care. Today we'll let everything in. We giggle without shame and raise our faces to be painted. We let Thief tuck morning glory blossoms in our hair, behind our ears. We tell each other how beautiful we are and mean it. Then we stream down the catwalk, back straight, gaze set on things far, far from here. The whole audience roars, even the keepers. Eventually, one of us is declared a winner, but we can't remember who. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. What a beautiful reading. So the next person we have up is Dilys Wyndham Thomas. She lives in the Netherlands. Her poems, Flash, and short stories have appeared in Chestnut Review, Dyslexia, New Flash Fiction Review, Rust and Moth, X-Ray, and elsewhere. Dilys also runs feedback workshops for Strange Birds Migratory Writing Collective and was an assistant poetry editor for Passengers Journal. Find her online at DilysSWT.com.
Hi everyone, my name's Dilys. Thank you for having me. I'll be reading a story and a poem. So, and please bear with me because my computer crashed just before this, so I'm reading from the physical copies. This story appeared in Flash Fiction Review's summer issue, and I know a lot of us are writers here, and I really loved working with their editors. They helped me nail the ending, so I really recommend submitting to them. Self-portrait of someone else. When Jill's eyes adjust to the light, she comes face to face with a life-sized painting of a naked, spread-eagled woman. It takes her a full minute to recognize herself. Connor had promised to paint only her face. The brushstrokes are clinical, almost brutal, every physical flaw thick and textured. Her appendicitis scar is a chasm of reds, Pimples gaze her from between her breasts, stretch marks scratch heavy into hips. Her vulva, framed by talon-like feet that claw and rip at the bed sheets, has become monstrous, a Freudian gorgon of swollen flesh. She's only ever seen herself from this angle once before. Aged 15, she had pocketed her mother's compact and taken it into the bathroom. Jill had been unprepared for all the complex folds, their muscle-like textures. "What do you think?" Connor asks. Jill notices the scrawled signature branded along the top of a mottled thigh. She remembers how beautiful and wanted and wanton it made her feel to pose for him, to be stretched out on the futon, that futon over there in the corner of the cramped studio. The air had been thick with the smells of sex and linseed. Connor had wanted to capture her profile, so she had to squint against the afternoon sun for hours, and as he worked, she had imagined a future together, the years that lay ahead. Dust glinted around them like tinsel. Jill steps closer to the painting and touches the woman's outstretched hand. The paint is tacky to the touch. Connor's hands have been all over this canvas woman, all over her own body. His hands have splayed them both apart. Jill brushes her fingers along a painted thigh, hard enough for the signature to smudge into skin. Connor looks on, pulls a cigarette from his breast pocket and strikes a match. Smoke and sulfur settle between them. When he speaks, Jill can hear a snarl curling at the edge of his lips. It should sell fast. Jill flinches. She had assumed he was giving her the painting. The thought of this portrait sprawled across an anonymous gallery wall, of bored strangers staring up at her, taking her home to mount above their mantelpiece, made her nauseous. "You're going to sell her," she says. The words catch in her throat. Connor shrugs and flicks cigarette ash into a mason jar of paintbrushes soaking in mineral spirits. He looks at her with what she now recognizes as hunger, raw appetite. Jill's disgust congeals into a glob of bright white rage. She pictures herself throwing the jar of paintbrushes against the painting, letting the portrait woman dissolve into herself. Plucking the cigarette from Connor's stained fingers and setting the studio ablaze, fire licking at the woman's feet, paint screaming. The moment passes. The Jill in the painting continues to reach out a single, desperate hand. Connor takes another drag of his cigarette. "How much?" Jill finally asks, knowing she will pay. And then this next poem, thank you. The next poem was published in Dyslexia over the summer. And I think I went to count before we started, and I'd submitted to Dyslexia, I think 27 times before it was accepted. So for all of those who submit, like, keep going. It's a golden shovel in conversation with Adrian Rich's wonderful diving into the wreck. I was a little bit obsessed with the Titan disaster a few years back. And in a wonderful coincidence, the poem was published on the very day, well, 40 years to the day, when the Titanic wreck was discovered in the North Atlantic, which sends shivers up my spine. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Titanic, after Adrian Rich diving into the wreck. Hour after hour, the world waits for news of the wreck. The weight of hope, a thing that lodges itself between our lungs and all the warnings not heeded, between the facts and the myth. And day after day, the twin wrecks wreathe there drowned in flowers of rust, so we can face ourselves sitting here, staring towards the petrol blue future, as the icebergs melt under Arctic sun, and night after night, the sonic boom evidence haunts us, the ghosts of irreparable damage, worn down to the bone by sleep apnea, salt, silted nightmares, and this collective sea sway from blind faith into personal grief, this wake for threadbare iron and submarine beauty. Breath after breath, the cathedrals of our ribs become diving bells of hypoxic prayers, the repositories of disaster. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your reading, Dilys. Up next, we have from our Detroit chapter, Kelly Fordon's second poetry collection, What Trammels the Heart, was published by SFA Press in 2025. Her short story collection, I Have the Answer, Wayne State University Press 2020, was chosen as a Midwest Book Award and Eric Hoffer finalist. She runs the fiction podcast, Let's Deconstruct a Story, and the poetry blog at kellyfordon.substack.com. And so she will post those in the chat. Kelly, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm thrilled to be here with Women Who Submit, and I have a little preamble, so I'm only going to read a couple poems because I wanted to share something about the process of publishing this. This collection, What Trammels the Heart, is my way of grappling with trauma from the Catholic Church abuse scandal and my own sexual assault. For many years, I felt like I was on the front lines of this issue with family members impacted by clergy abuses. I also grew up in DC, and I am a contemporary of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who went to the brother school of my all-girls Catholic high school. After some of my classmates defended Brett Kavanaugh in 2018 and others stood up for Chrissy Blasey Ford, our class was torn apart, especially since many of my classmates, including myself, admitted that they were also victims of sexual assault during high school. Because this group is about working toward publication, I wanted to talk about the impact of sharing such a highly personal narrative with friends and family. For several months after this book came out, I completely shut down. I shut down because of the details I shared about my own assault. I shut down because I had called out the church and my own mother, and though I was no longer Catholic, it is no easy feat escaping Catholic guilt. One of the most insidious, I want to say ludicrous, after effects of sexual assault, at least in my case, is shame. We were taught by the church and by our parents during my era that if you decide to go alone into a room with a boy, anything that happens there is your fault. That is the terrible reason I never spoke up, and so many of my classmates kept silent as well. When I finally did, it may come as no surprise that friends and family did not exactly clap. And I'm telling you this for a reason. One day, about 3 months after publication, I picked up Virginia Giuffre's incredible memoir, Nobody's Girl, about her encounter with Jeffrey Epstein, and it transformed my outlook. Her voice mattered. It mattered to me personally. It may well have saved my life. And I started thinking about all the voices that came before her, Chrissy Blasey Ford, Anita Hill, to name a few. The price they paid for speaking up was enormous, but they have saved women and emboldened other survivors, hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions, who draw strength from their testimony. In the end, this somewhat lengthy preamble is a long way of saying that your voice matters, and as the poet Vivi Francis famously said, say it any way you can. So I'm just going to read 2 poems. Confessional. I slipped in between the folds and sat in the dark, hot box, examining my conscience and waiting for the screen to slide open and the keeper of the keys to materialize. His was not the face of a stocking-faced burglar or a postman or the creeper who used to circle my block in his white van, but it was not the face of God either. God would not have fingered a clump of pellets while peppering me with allegations. He would not have said, "Are you sure that's all you've done?" When I was little, I saw a supposed saint, the marquee attraction in the basement of a famous church. In her glass coffin, she lay with her hands pointing towards heaven, rosary beads coiled around her waxy fingertips. It was chilly in that temperature-controlled room. According to the sign, she'd been lying unmolested for hundreds of years. Good for her. One touch, and I turned right to dust. Hall, Montana, Easter weekend. The family left me alone here at this ranch on the night before Easter, so I'm holding vigil for my old life, the one with the peeps and the creeps, the swarms of sinners and saints, not nearly as sublime as the view right now. The mountains snow-capped, the river like a mad rush of silver fairies racing towards who knows where. The dog, Molly, as black as if she'd just emerged from the lake of fire, her eyes like some amber liquid that would do me in a hot minute. I'm listening to the perfect symphony, and I don't miss any of it, not the wafer, nor the wine, nor all the time I wasted on shame, the nun with the half finger, how she wagged it in my face, my mother yanking me out from under the table where I was kissing my little friend Alexandra. We'd just seen Billy Jack, and we didn't get it until we did. My mother spent this whole weekend in church praying for forgiveness. She's her mother's daughter, not the source, just the moon reflecting off the barn sash window. I'd like to hold her up like a spray of forsythia, sprinkle her into the creek, watch her spin like a helicopter on white water. There is only sky out here, no one but me and the wind. I can't carry this anymore. Like Molly with her deer leg, maybe I'll bury my bitterness in the middle of the prairie. Maybe it will transmogrify. Maybe it will feed me. Thank you.
Thank you for the beautiful intro and the beautiful reading. Next up, we have Sara Bawany, MFA, MSSW, Women Who Submit Austin, is an award-winning poet, author, and clinical social worker based in Austin, Texas. She is the author of 2 poetry books, Wholehearted, a collection of poetry and prose, and Quarter Life Crisis. Her spoken word performances have been featured on TEDx and ACLU, Texas. She serves as the lead writing instructor at House of a Mall.
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be here. And Kelly, I just want to really shout out your intro. I actually used to work in the field of clergy abuse, and the essay I'm going to read touches on that a little bit. So it feels like a really interesting alignment that I think is really beautiful. So I'm going to start with a poem. This is, if you haven't, oh no, the blurring background. This is an anthology called Praise Song for the People, Poems from the Heart and Soul of Texas. Put together by our poet laureate, Amanda Johnston. It's a really fantastic anthology. I highly recommend purchasing it. But I have a poem in there called What Started Here. So I'll start with that, and then I'll read whatever bit of the essay I can. So the purpose of this book and of this project was to give praise, write a praise poem for someone in Texas that changed our lives or impacted us, or even in the smallest and most minute of ways. So this particular poem is dedicated to the demonstrators beaten and arrested by the police at the 2 UT Austin student-led protests, calling for the university to divest from companies linked to Israel's 75-plus-year genocide against Palestinians, which happened April 2024. This book, and I think the poem itself, was published almost exactly a year later, which was really interesting timing. So what started here? In the aftermath, a viral photo shows a line of cops in riot gear. Beside them, a big orange sign with the slogan many of you likely heard at orientation: "What starts here changes the world." The tower's shadow loomed like a vulture, overlooking demonstrators brutalized in broad daylight on South Mall. The backdrop of batons and stun guns comical against bright green grass, heads smacked into concrete by those claiming to protect and serve. A wheelchair tossed aside like litter, its inhabitant thrown to the ground. It was April, and nearby, pomegranate trees were flowering on campus. In the center of it all, where students would celebrate graduation a month later, the assault on free speech. You could say this is where it started, but that would be hyperbole. Older now, I can see the tower from my window the same way I did at 18. Still a symbol of possibility, but the kind where overpaid adults have the gall to attack unarmed teenagers, alumni, those against tuition dollars saturated in Gaza's blood. The price of becoming critical thinkers, beaten when demonstrating a mastery of learning outcomes. Outside agitators did this, it was said. And isn't the university environment ripe for that kind of rhetoric? Isn't violence just business after all, the kind we'd watched across our screens for the last 6 months, and before that, and before that? Your bravery was your weapon, the willingness to go on stamped as exile, as suspended, unable to live in resolute oblivion, just trying to get to class, just trying to mind your own business. There were others arms locked with chins defiantly lifted, journalists tackled for doing their job. Sometimes the irony writes itself. Later, the rest of us waited outside the jail, distance slamming on your windows, several stories up in rhythm with our chanting all night until voices ran hoarse. As you all trickled out over many hours, mockingly bowing or dancing, eyes rimmed red, the marks of zip ties still on your wrists but keffiyehs proudly in place, we celebrated an inevitable freedom, joyful for the day's heroes. History will remember you kindly, and we'll make sure of it. Guess you just had to be there. And that's the poem. The essay I'm going to read, I definitely will not be able to finish all of it because it's like 6 pages, but I'll start with it and I'll end it whenever it ends at time. So it's called The Opposite of Solitude. It is also another COVID piece. Take with that what you will. 2020 is a year we remember for many reasons. The pandemic, the election, the gnawing of forced isolation, the death and division wreaking havoc upon our most beloved. Let me set the stage. I was 25, 2.5 years into my career as a social worker and in the middle of my quarter-life crisis. These are the important facts for now. The weekend before the world shut down in mid-March 2020, I traveled to a small town with the nonprofit I worked for, which investigated abusive religious leadership in the Muslim community. It was my first major work trip, and I spent the week assisting with interviewing community members and former colleagues of the alleged perpetrator, who had run through the single and married women of the community and solicited them for secret marriages. On our downtime, we carelessly monitored the news. The fear of an ambiguous illness that everyone else seemed to be spilling over the edge with was laughable to us. The horrors we saw as Muslim women privy to our religious leadership beating children or sexually assaulting vulnerable women who came to them for help felt much more material and, as a result, more terrifying. Every time we, or even some poor random passerby, would sneeze or cough in the chilly springtime temperatures, one of us would shout, "It's COVID!" and collapse in a fit of giggles. We weren't masking up yet and were amused by those who did, despite our own lingering relationships with physical and mental illness, further exacerbated through the vicarious trauma of our difficult careers. A few days after returning home to Dallas, airlines across the country were ravaged with cancellations and the news began to feel less and less amusing. It was March 15th by this point, and my calendar began to steadily populate with virtual events as the world shut down. A Zoom fitness class here, an online open mic there, a Muslim mental health professionals meeting, brainstorming how we might address the needs of our community. Recovering from driving nearly 100 miles daily around the Metroplex for 2 years while at my first job, and working in a hybrid setting at the time, I welcomed the stagnancy with a sigh of relief. Despite waking up each morning with aching ankles and parched lips, no doubt a side effect of the Accutane I had resorted to several months prior, I assembled my first charcuterie board, tried the Dalgona coffee trend, made banana bread, and mulled over my privilege as I quarantined with my mother and sister. I wrote and shared reflections and poems online, meditating on my newfound and glorious use of time. But like many, I also scrolled endlessly on my phone, increasingly grief-stricken as the number of COVID deaths climbed like a creeping vine over my sense of safety. On March 31st, the US death toll was around 4,000. On April 15th, just 2 weeks later, it was at least 27,000. By the end of April, the Islamic holy month of Ramadan had begun, and I published a very matter-of-fact op-ed about the benefits Muslims might find in this isolation, although Ramadan is typically a very communal time for us. Despite growing online commentary of the universal agitation that everyone else seemed to be experiencing, I was thriving in isolation, convinced we all needed more solitude. Our late-night chatters in the masjid was unnecessary, as were the 1 a.m. coffee runs, I argued, knowing we'd need to be up 4 hours later. Preceding my sleep apnea diagnosis by 2 years, I pushed the limits of my body that Ramadan by developing a regimented, almost military schedule for the day. 4:30 a.m. prayer, 5 a.m. suhoor, the breakfast for the fasting, 5:30 a.m. fajr, Quran, a morning meditation, something new I was trying out. 6 a.m. to 2:30 was the workday. Afterwards, I'd give myself permission to nap, cook, and work out. I cut out processed sugar, deleted my social media apps, and committed myself to donating to a different charity each day, even if only a few dollars. And I'm going to stop there. This is actually published in the Journal of Sexual Violence in Muslim Communities. I forgot to share the link, but I will do that here. This goes on much longer and takes many turns, but thank you so much for listening and being here.
Thank you, Sara. Please do list that link because I would love to read the story. Next up is our West LA chapter co-lead and someone I had the pleasure of meeting this summer at the Penn America Fellowship that we were both part of it, Jasmine Vallejo-Love. is a disabled Puerto Rican American poet, writer living in Los Angeles. A Diana Woods Memorial Award finalist, 2025 Lambda Literary Fellow, and selected for PEN America Emerging Voices Workshop, her work has been anthologized and appears in journals such as Lunch Ticket and Chola Needles. Find her on Instagram at Cafecito with Jazz. Take it away, Jasmine.
Thank you, Lucy. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. I'm going to read a couple of poems for you today. The first poem is in an anthology on Black mental health, and it's called You Never Laid a Hand on Me. You never laid a hand on me. You didn't have to. I flinched at the lunges and fake-outs, acquiesced to the raised fist, quieted at your yells and growls. A firm look was enough to attenuate my resolve. No, I should never say a word about who I really am. Your misogyny wafted like intoxicating perfume, carrying the weighted message, bury it deep. I dug a 7-foot grave, extra for good measure, lest you try to trick me out in a drunken rage. So sure-footed in my deception that years beyond your house, lying in the muck you created, I denied my butterfly wings. Now frail, your salty words fall short of stinging as I worm my way out into sunshine. The next poem was published in Chola Needles Literary Journal this past May, and it's called Existential Crisis. I never felt light, the serenity of nature, just heavy with the burden of existence. Sunshine fried my skin like chicharrones, allergic, flowers agitated. Water drowned me once already, paddles shocking the breath back. How could I be of use to this earth? Alien limbs flailing, a speck of dust in the universe, purpose unclear. Yet each soul has weight, heft, meant to take up space. Destined to be more than bone and flesh, I was gifted this cavernous mind where words play like school children and phrases of empowerment are derived. Images rattlesnake through clouds of recollections of hands held, tears dried, being the soft bosom to lean on when darkness mists my kinfolk and only my demulcent voice sparks healing. Firmly rooted, perhaps I am descendant of plants, easing the swelling like turmeric, boosting the energy like ashwagandha, enriching the brain like ginkgo. My discomfort in the wild stemming from insecurity, fear of the unpaved. But what is life, if not bursts of unpredictability? This next poem is in an anthology called Anger is a Gift, where poets respond to the 2024 election. And it's called We Are Buoys. We are buoys. I'm on the front lines, queer, Black, Latinx, disabled, ready to take on more friendly fire. Past triumphs over struggle bulletproofed my resolve, yet the flesh still wounds as they leach upon us. I say to you, set fire to the slime and weaponize your joy. Dance unyieldingly, blare your heart song, protest wildly, make love anyway. Let our thunders marching summon the ancestors' solidity. Their blood fuels the resistance flowing through our veins. Let freedom be the reborn that unleashes our roars. Oppressors' ears will bleed at the sound of our cries. Let them drown in our salty water. We already know how to float. This next poem was accepted into Pinch Journal and will be out in March of 2026. And it's called My Response When the Instructor Prompted Us to Craft a Poem About Flowers at a Time Like This. Hell with asking me to write about flowers when we're fighting for our right to exist. Unless we're speaking of sheros, like Abuela Nana, who like a daylily is perennial, surviving, blooming despite poor soil and neglect, nearly indestructible. With her backbone made of Kevlar, that woman surmounted all the isms in a day and age that wanted her put down. Or if we're talking about Abuela Mama, a marigold, pest resistant even to her own husband. Smiling bright despite the abuse, sun and fun-loving, she danced and sang every day anyway. Or maybe if you asked about Mom, who moves through each season like a ninja and miraculously blooms in the hardest conditions, a milk flower, breaking her way through the frost, I owe them my voice, my resilience. They are the reasons I can endure the heat of fascism easier, like Russian sage summons the ancestors' strength. And this last poem is my version of a love poem, and it's dedicated to my husband. I was taught to be afraid of men who look like you. Fierce-faced, tall, sturdy, white, bearded, in camo. I was taught to be scared of men with profiles like yours. Country bred, trained in combat, knows the kill points. But you defied every stereotype. Warm, not angry. Funny, not sarcastic. Hug-fueled, not trigger-happy. With a deep bellowed laugh that shimmers with joy, not the ominous cackles that make me want to get out. When the supremacists catch you alone, they assume kin. Instead, you lean in, grit teeth, say, I am not your brother. Walk away fuming. You take the hits, the spit. When our affection enrages those who dehumanize brown skin, I sat in constant anxiety, like when walking alone at night, until you propped me up like an angel resting on cumulus clouds and reassured, head on a swivel, need not be my permanent state. You'll be lookout, so I can rest. Raised by a Mexican abuela in a family married to all races, you put your foot in those enchiladas cooked with soul, like your mac and cheese, and the pride taken in the breakfast you make each morning as you dance to reggaeton and model runway style just to make me giggle. My symbol of happiness, safety, the lighthouse guiding me home, you've shown me tenderness can live in the male gaze. We both remain wary of men who look like you. Proceed cautiously, wondering what they have been taught about me. Thank you all.
Thank you for the beautiful reading. Next, we will have Ariel Joy Sows. She's from Women Who Submit, New York City. Her work has appeared in Tupelo Quarterly, Sinking City, Foothill Poetry, and elsewhere. She holds an MFA from Columbia University, earning the Linda Corrente Poetry Prize and a Gowdy Boy finalist. She received support from Mellon Foundation, Vermont Studio Center, Community of Writers, Juniper Institute, and Minnesota Northwoods. Her website is www.arieljoyso.com.
Hello, thank you so much for being here at this reading. I'm so honored to be a part of Women Who Submit and so grateful to the hosts and organizers. It's just beautiful hearing everyone read today. And I'll be reading 3 poems. The first one is called Family Reunion. It was published this year in Mother Tongue Journal. If you haven't yet, please check out their Lit Mag. They're a group of wonderful editors who focus on diaspora writers and voices like my own. It was very special for me to have my poem be in their first issue and to be able to write about home, which is Hong Kong for me, where I grew up, and to share it with the world. Family Reunion. Leaves drop gorgeous dead. The world softens like a crust of crestfallen snow. My thorny veins swell. All month I have considered immigrating to a country who doesn't flick her eye at me once. All month, dead, monkeyed air. We caked, we slept, we tied our feet together at home. We barked with the dogs because we could. We bore light on our sleeves, cried happy tears, and scarfed Montau in single big gulps. The entire night was so glorious I thought someone I loved would die. that in dark comedy, the gods were inhaling lightning smoke while popping popcorns into their almighty mouths. All that time, the plane couldn't bring Alma 7 seas across, time coalescing into a mad hairball. The next poem I'll read is called Self-Portrait as Body. It's forthcoming in February 2026 in the magazine Copy Break. It was founded by 3 Singaporean poets, and this one means a lot to me because I spent a lot of years living in Singapore with my family before moving here to the US. Self-Portrait as Body. An after image travels 24,901 miles across the circumference of my planet's skull. The reason I keep returning like a dog. When rationality came knocking, my various selves made me irresolute to a fault, waiting for nothing to happen, knowing something could combust from thin air. The wastelands heavy with the dryness so thick it could ignite our throats. My body's weight asked to topple over. My friends implicated me into your equation because there were no other suspects, no motives or weapons found, only bodies. Why did you make me into a spectacle? You, the enigmatic artist, I at the museum's pale crater, dust joining debris. The implied question, if you were wiped clean of me, as raw as an unrefined grain of rice. If, then, to abide by your rules, a rotation of corner, wooden buildings, white sheets melting away, our climate of care and shiver, volatile as seasonal glacier, a cycle. Boxing into a loneliness to leave out contradictions, to flip over in bed, a childish awakening, a backward unfolding. What was it you said that made me think I was like you once? I was convinced our coincidences made us similar, compatible. In reverse, I was living in a roofless house with spiders the size of my room, the birch trees dangling from my ceiling as speckled frost. You, a pocket to draw close. News traveling west and a tongue tangled with the brain's gut. And I'll close with one last poem called Origins. This one I wrote earlier this year at the Community of Writers, and I wanted to bring it to today's reading to share a little bit of what I've been working on. Thank you again for having me here. It's been so delightful to read among all these wonderful writers. Origins. Ama. Tonight, Ama compliments the pregnancy glow in my sister's blushed face. Outside, the wood bark conifer suggests regrowth, pulsating, soft, shapeless. Like papier-mâché, the fruits of a daughter's daughter unglued onto a family tree. She tells me, hurry up and have a kid. But, Grandma, I could sit on a lush mountain and return to bed covered in moss. What I mean is, maybe I don't want a kid. The greatest gift I may never give, my mom hemming a wedding dress, sewing a newborn granddaughter's bows for her fist-sized head. She complains about my sister as if I am her. Don't throw your anger at me. Meanwhile, that sister fears her own girl will end up butting heads with her like she does with Mom. She's got a stiff neck, which in our tongue means stubborn. We tell Ama the baby has her mouth. Everyone has trauma, my friend Cece says, unaware the one I carry isn't inherited. It's stored in a lockbox that my family forgets they couldn't protect me. A refrain in my dreams, our mom whisking up congee with preserved eggs and spring onions. I've got nothing to say to her that I haven't already. Atop the wood bark fireplace, there's a black and white drawing of an adolescent's arms reaching the floor, bent forward in half. An older woman, eyes closed, hair in a low bun, one hand atop the other. Finally, the mouth in jaw-dropped motion. I wonder if it's the same lady aging over time, a copy machine reprinted, each frame another reiteration, the distant aspen trees glimmering against each other in their unspoken symphony. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ariel, for your beautiful work. Next up, we have someone from our Waterloo region of Canada chapter, Shantell Powell. Is a swamp hag, elder goth, raised in an apocalyptic cult on the land off the grid. A brave new weird winner and Aurora finalist. Her work appears in Augur magazine, The Deadlands, Unspec, and more. She writes, wrangles chinchillas, and gets filthy in the woods. Shantell, take it away.
Hi, sorry about clearing my throat right at the most inopportune moment. I'm going to put a couple links right in the chat here for what I'll be reading. The first piece is something called Raspberry Elegy, which is published in Alocasia magazine. The raspberry canes grew jungle thick, and my sister and I carved tunnels through the prickles, red juice running from overripe berries like the blood from our scratched up limbs. So many berries that we even had some left over for jam after filling our bellies and ruining our suppers. The scabby old canes were the best. They bore the most fruit, hidden deep in the thorny thicket, a barbed wire fence no grown-up would ever dare cross. Until they did. My sister and I wept. Tractors rumbled like tanks, grinding treasure into chewed-up tracks. They would have poisoned the land, too, sprayed weed killer, as though raspberries are weeds, all to plant Christmas trees to be murdered each December. Dad told them that weed killer would poison our spring, poison our ponies, poison us. And so the land lay fallow, rebirthing itself with goldenrod, timothy, wild oats, daisies, red clover. The next year, ponies grazed a newborn pasture. And the next piece I want to read comes from this collection, which is Uprising. This just was published a couple weeks ago, I believe, and it's a collection of rebellious imaginings from authors with lived experience of mental health and addictions. And this is the closing piece in it called To Live a Life More Full. I am from paperback westerns, ringer washers, and fake wooden paneling, from Chevys and Evan Products and the Irving Corporation, from Agent Orange and clear cuts and industrial poisoning lung disease. I am from no fixed address, the home with wheels, camper, travel trailer, and mobile home smelling of freshly baked bread and wet collie. I'm from trailer parks, campgrounds, or squatting on crown land nestled in the cleavage of mountains, melting glaciers. I am from the bunchberry, bake apple, blueberry, partridge berry, and tiny wild strawberry, the cedar, balsam, fir, tamarack, chokecherry, and alder with cable-thick roots. I am from Appalachians and Rockies, rainforest and muskeg, permafrost and desert, the color of porridge. I am from my father's maple sugar line out in the bush. I am from door to door on Saturday mornings to the houses much nicer than ours, from fearing both God and the devil, from Parsons and Chalk and Powell, Twombly and Rolfe, from settlers and from Mi'kmaq and Inuit women given their husbands' names and languages because their own were stolen. I am from spare the rod and spoil the child, from the difference between a buck's tracks and a doe's, from being bullied after school, after school, after school. I'm from feeding the animals before feeding myself, because without my care, they will suffer, and I will not let them suffer. I am from skinned knees and stinging cheeks and black eyes. I'm from hard and fast gender roles, homophobia, and enforced subjection to men, from bringing home firewood on the dog sled, cooking bannock over a stick, and fishing in the creek while watching for bears. I am from Jehovah's Witnesses and Salvation Army, from believing the colonial claptrap that my indigenous ancestors were devil worshippers, from skies washed white-black by the Milky Way, from singing down bleeding green aurora, from garbage dumps where grizzlies and mountain lions scavenged and squeaking brown bats chased the pebbles I tossed, I'm from stolen Maliseet territory along the Woolastook on a hospital long closed, but remembering how moose sometimes wandered inside. From Jacob's cattle beans, fish and brewis, cod cheeks and tongue, seal meat, bottled venison, peeled potatoes, and butter and molasses sandwiches for school. From Nanny, who skipped from flow to flow like a flat rock across frigid water, Papa with the proud member of the Wife Beaters Club sign, and Nana, who ripped up my baby photos. From Pa, who removed the dead from coal mines. I am from a home burnt by arson, from bulldozed barn and destroyed dory, from wild ponies running free as far as the eye can see on land that knew no fences, from polluted wells and boil orders, and from a mountain spring with the sweetest, cleanest water anyone could ever hope to drink. I am from underage soldier, underaged wives, from army brat horse girl, from hunters, fishermen, cowboys, and mummers, from fishwives and lobster canners, and the Queen of England's honor guard. I am my ancestors. I am our memories, no longer young, but not too old to live a life more full. Thank you.
Thank you for the beautiful reading. Our next reader is Augustine Blaisdell from Women Who Submit Chapter Europe. She's the author of Women a la Mode. She hosts a monthly I'm not doing well with reading today, phylogeny party, and writes regularly for the complimentary Substack newsletter of the same name. Her work has been published in a variety of literary magazines and supported by the Red Loaf Writers Conference. She received her MFA from Columbia University and is the founder of the Writers Retreat in the Côte d'Azur.
Thank you so much. Wow. I'm Augustine. It's such an honor to be with you all. This is such a beautiful reading. I'm so grateful to Women Who Submit to be part of this. And I'll be reading excerpts from my work in progress, the Phylogeny Project, which was published in Story Quarterly earlier this year. And I'm thankful to Paul Lisicki, who's a wonderful editor to work with, and for you all for being here. So thank you. All right, the Phylogeny Project. Looking at the Madonna sex book on mushrooms with my dad, my boyfriend, and 2 future lovers sounds sexually perverse at best. To be clear, I had no idea my 2 other platonic male friends and I would eventually sleep together several times on separate occasions. That they are all in love with me, that I knew. In 1997, we tore apart Madonna's sex book page by page, something to be said for spiral binding, not literally tearing the pages, but separating them from their order. The one image I really remember is her totally nude being pulled out of the water, erotic. There is no other word that suits the definition itself of erotic. Here was Madonna claiming her sexuality for herself. At 22 years, my senior, Madonna has been a permanent fixture of my entire life. I am a child of Madonna, a Madonna's child. Reading through Madonna's early history is fascinating. How she dropped out of college and moved to Alphabet City with only $35, saying it was the bravest thing she's ever done. She was forced to give a blowjob at knife point by 2 men late one night while returning from rehearsal. I never knew that. She never again wanted to feel that powerless. Perhaps her erotic sex book phase is part of taking that power back. Originally published on November 29th, 1992, when I was 12, I don't remember looking at the book until that night on mushrooms. And now when I look through it, I realize it really is a book. There is a story there. It is Madonna, even though she says that it's all fantasy and made up. She is very clear about the importance of condoms, having lost so many friends to AIDS. The silver mylar wrapping of the book itself was meant to imitate a condom wrapper. She's very clear about safe sex and not dangerous sex. It might truly be the first sex-positive book of my time, and its voyeuristic journal-like nature makes it a particularly unique artifact. There has been no other book like it. It really is the epitome of an art object. Here she is completely fearless and unapologetic, continuously reinventing herself. This is what I most admire about her. At a time when everyone was scared to death of sex, how politically radical to create an album and book about sex and her desires. I grew up terrified by AIDS. By the time I started having sex, we knew how you got it. What I didn't know at the time was how women like Madonna, Elizabeth Taylor, and Princess Diana were among the first to physically embrace people with AIDS, as well as among the first to create fundraisers in support of AIDS research. That the very act of talking, singing, writing about sex is political defiance. Phylogeny, the love and admiration for women, is intertwined with sex. When women in Afghanistan are being systematically erased because they've been made to be responsible for men's supposed sexual thoughts, and they can't sing, speak, leave the house by themselves, or even read poetry aloud, this is what is happening at this very moment. So sex is inextricably linked with the love and admiration for women and girls, because rules about sex and fear of sex prohibit women from everything. How brave Jennifer Hermoso, the champion soccer player for the Spanish team that won the Women's World Cup in 2023, was to say that the manager kissed her without her consent and still didn't apologize. How this can happen in front of the whole world and we can still doubt the validity of this claim. This is misogyny. And what if misogyny was treated like a disease akin to alcoholism? We know misogyny is responsible for the assault on our freedoms, from women in Iran to Poland, Italy, and the United States. Let's face it, every country in the world. What we don't know yet is that its antonym, phylogeny, is its cure. One quote by Madonna particularly sticks out. I talked to a dominatrix once, and she said that the definition of S&M was you let someone hurt you who would never hurt you. This is the trust I feel in my own marriage. In 2019, before I reflect on the impact of the Madonna sex book might have had on my own self-concept, I, like her, create an alter ego, writing in third person. But even in writing in first person is to create another persona, the persona of the piece, of the scene, to use kink terminology. Kink is consent. I was interested in sex in my teenage years. It feels like I have to say here, who wasn't? Perhaps sadly teenagers in this generation. But I had no idea the ins and outs of BDSM, that it might be something I would be into later in life. I probably would have predicted it by my younger self. Revisiting that moment of us in a circle around the images of Madonna spread out on the hardwood floor, I choose what I can take from it now, which is that I was loved and admired then. And in loving and admiring Madonna, I'm loving and admiring myself. We talk about internalized misogyny. This is internalized phylogeny. This is phylogeny in action. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Augustine. That was beautiful. Up next from our Detroit chapter, we have Jennifer Blackledge, who is a Detroit area poet who works in the automotive industry. She is the recipient of the 2025 Zocalo Public Square Poetry Prize, and her work has appeared in publications like JAMA, Rattle, I-70 Review, Kestrel, and more. You can find her work at www.jenniferblackledge.com. Take it away, Jennifer.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Elise and Judy, our chapter leads who got the chapter going and are keeping it going, because it's just been a great experience and community so far, and also connected me with all of you. So thanks to them. So this first poem I'm going to read was published in Rattle in their Poets Respond feature in February. It started with Elon Musk's Nazi salute and a word of the day email that I get. So it's called The Word of the Day is Widdershins. The word of the day is Widdershins, which sounds fun and elfin, like that dance that leprechauns do, hobnail boots clicking, sorry, clicking with glee, or maybe something a confused rabbit in coattails might say when he's lost his way. Ah, Widdershins, as he lights his adorable pipe and adjusts his whittle wireframe glasses. But like everything lately that arrives in my inbox or crosses my screen, it's not cute at all. Just a twee way to say backwards, not right, in a direction contrary to the sun's course, considered unlucky, counterclockwise, like every day of this cursed year. I want it to be a magic word I can say 3 times and focus my rage to reset the course. Widdershins, Widdershins, Widdershins. But all it summons is my neighbor saying, come on, it was just a Roman salute. Or a video of the ladies I used to see at school drop-off or softball games singing God Bless America in red, white, and blue shirts and hats that ends with their right arms in the air giggling. And yet another think piece that asks mildly if we really saw what we saw. That arm raised like a dark minute hand that drags us fucking Widdershins down into a warren we dug so long ago we forgot how deep it ran beneath us. The second poem was published in Zocalo Public Square in April. It's about a landfill I grew up across the street from, or the landfill grew up across the street from me. So this is how that happened in a really residential area. And it seems like really relevant now because everybody's fighting data centers, so everywhere. So kind of similar. It's called Mount Trashmore. People brought their sagging couches, tired tires, splattered paint cans, styrofoam coolers, fatally rent asunder, and God knows what else, like car batteries, because the 70s were a decade with few rules and none of them applied to a small city dump. So when the city council and comptroller pitched a plan to transform trash into treasure and put in a liner and a clever methane system to turn that dump into a state-of-the-art landfill that would eventually be beautiful grassy shoulders holding up a resort. Yes, a resort here, a ski hill, a chairlift, 27 holes of golf, and a rotating restaurant on top. You can bet we snickered and said, yeah, right, but still allowed ourselves a little daydream because the trash has to go somewhere. So why not make them all pay for a nice library and a place to sled and have a drink with a view and slice golf balls into the sunset? Because don't we deserve that too? So we said, hell yeah, bring us your garbage and we'll ski on it in our Kmart parkas and it'll buy us new ambulances every year and fire trucks so big we'll have to build a new station. So the garbage rolled in from our neighbors first, and then New Jersey and Ohio and Canadian convoys from across the bridge, loaded down with pillowy, stinking bags. But we barely noticed the smell except on the hottest days of summer when the wind was just right or just wrong. And we learned how to ski and we had family dinners and baby showers in the restaurant at the base. And when 60 Minutes called us the town that loves trash, it was sort of exciting. And we thought maybe other places would see we were the future. Not monorails or solar panels, but garbage to gold. With seagulls coasting and cawing like we lived by the ocean. So even in the dead of winter, scraping ice off our windshields, we could trick ourselves into that beach state of mind. But the turkey vultures were a little harder to ignore, especially because they like to catch the warm air currents coming up from the elementary school a few blocks away from the mountain and circle lazily and maybe even slightly ominously due to their sheer number. So we'd say, look alive, keep moving to the kids when we drop them off in the morning, their small bodies being sized up by these carcass sniffers. And yeah, I know the birds have their place in the ecosystem, but when 20 or 30 roost in the tree next to your new above ground pool every day and stare, you can't help but wish they'd go somewhere else, somebody else's backyard. Plus the paper tumbleweeds and plastic bags and winged scavengers shitting on my parents' awnings weren't as easily ignored after the hill got too hot to hold snow just 10 years after it opened. But it kept growing anyway, like a child vampire we mistakenly invited into our home, who stayed, and now, unlike a vampire, it casts a shadow over the intersection clogged with belching trucks. But who could have predicted the small fires breaking out every few days, or the smell that collects in basements and garages and makes us clear our decks like a lingering fart at a party? And now we're out there shaking our fists at the traffic and writing letters saying enough is enough. Come on, this isn't what we signed up for. The giant methane flame shooting out the side of the hill 24/7, like an inflamed community liver after a lifelong bender. The creeping foothills of garbage getting closer. And after the rowdy meeting where they talked about expanding it exponentially, they changed the name to Land Preserve and hired a public relations firm. And now they wait and wait until there's no one left who remembers the ski hill and revolving restaurant promise. And when grass still grew and we could send the kids outside without them bringing the stink back in, and they wait until we give up and forget we ever worried about groundwater, subdued by threats of tax hikes and 15 LED lit cannabis stores in a town of 14,000, until we finally settled down in our driveway lawn chairs to admire the eternal methane glow like a bonus sunset every night, like a bunch of turkey vultures catching the smell of death while still warming our black garbage bag wings in the sun. Thank you.
Thank you for the beautiful reading. And now we're on to our very last reader today. I can't believe how quickly it has gone. Cristina Adams is from Women Who Submit Austin, is a Cuban-American writer. Her poetry has appeared in Dickinson Review, Minetta Review, ARC, The Broken Teacup, and other publications. When she's not writing for joy or pay, she likes to cook, travel, and make music. She lives in Austin with her husband and Luna, the dog.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Women Who Submit. And I would like to also do a shout out to our chapter leader and founder, Ramona Reeves, who I believe is online. Sara and I were at our second annual reading last night, and it was an amazing event. So thank you for this wonderful organization and for all these brilliant women writers. The first poem I'm reading 2 poems. The first one was published in The Broken Teacup in April of this year. And it's part of a collection that looks at the different forms that rage can take. Rage looks for a place to rest. I have armloads of anger. It is full of grief. Some days it snarls, a tethered pit bull behind chain links, snaps at passers-by, frenemies, politicians, assholes. The taste of escape on the apex of its tongue, canines clacking, strings of furious drool swinging from its maw. A brother's temper, stomped pale by the years, fits in a shot glass, lives quietly on his pantry shelves behind jars of seaweed green dill pickles, boxes of day-glow orange macaroni dinners. No, he didn't forget where he put it, but he tries. Amnesia promises a more peaceful home. On overcast, humid days, when the dog lolls on her back, legs splayed in sufferance, rage takes a break, stretches out, sneaks away for a little me time. Cultivating wrath is hard labor, like bricklaying or collecting garbage along an interstate, with only the spiteful August sun to piss you off. May I leave some of this burden in the borrow pit? You only need enough for a sip. And the second poem is, it's a new poem, still sort of tinkering with it. And that's part of another collection I'm working on. My mother's Cuban, and that I grew up in a bicultural household. And I'm just looking at all the aspects of that. How to Flee Your Country, 1960. 1. Plan. Be deliberate when choosing your shoes. Dust off the most comfortable pair in your closet. Vogue magazine calls them Cuban heels. Here, everyone calls them tacones. Here on your island, a husband might get a taconazo for flirting with the widow next door. Hollow out the heels. Fill them with jewelry. Mommy's wedding ring. a First Communion charm bracelet, diamond earrings from the Ramon Grau years, a pearl necklace. Anything that could stir yearning, that could be stolen, melted down, sold, worn by a stranger. The not-so-secret police will search, seize, discard, or divide, whatever strokes their pleasure whenever the urge strikes. You are as sure of this as the sun rising hot and high. 2. Prepare. Before collecting your travel permit, cover your fury with cosmetics and a smile. Pay special attention to the shadows under your eyes. Give nothing away, not a single briny tear or tremulous syllable. Draw a boundary line around your lips. Apply the reddest red in your vanity. Red as ripe tomatoes. Red as blood exposed to oxygen. Red as the rage that dwells in your dreams. Remember to draw your eyebrows, leaving one arched in unspoken judgment. A dagger-faced compañero, drunk on his teaspoon of power, refuses your husband a visa. No reason or exception, not even for your daughter's wedding. He smirks at your surprise, stabs a finger at the next supplicant in line. You want to scream, "Hijo de puta!" You want to gouge out his eyes with a paperclip. Don't. Cinch your lips. Bury your consonants and vowels deep in your bones. Order them to hibernate. 3. Execute. Book a round-trip ticket to Rochester. Ignore your husband's oblique warning about an open return. Watch him twist the points of his mustache the way Greeks finger their worry beads. Listen as he calls you Niña, speaks in code, leaves your imagination frantic to fill in the future. Send him an assassin's glare. Use your perfect penciled eyebrows to chase him from the room. Allow yourself to cry. Pack a coat, gloves, the lamb's wool hat your husband brought you from Moscow 3 dictators ago. Remember to take your azabache pendant. You can't have too much insurance against the evil eye. At the airport, keep the buen viaje short, bittersweet. Tell him you'll be back soon. Say it twice, or you might not go. Ask Yemaya to protect him. Once airborne, press your face to the window. See your Miramar neighborhood? See the beach in Varadero? A row of royal palms standing vigil. Keep watching until the plane banks north over a vast plain of whitecaps. Now, close your eyes. Pretend you are not going into exile. Anything could happen while you're away. Anything already has. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the beautiful reading. So we were very fortunate today because we were able to hear the work of Barbara Diggs, Dilys Wyndham Thomas, Kelly Fordon, Sara Bawany, Jasmine Vallejo-Love, Ariel So, Shantell Powell, sorry about that, Shantell, Augustine Blaisdell, Jennifer Blackledge, and Cristina Adams. I apologize for messing up your names. So what I'd like to encourage the people that are at home who've had the pleasure of listening to these wonderful, strong voices is if you'd like to ask a question, please do so in the chat. And Lucy and I will ask our writers the questions on your behalf. And Lucy and I are just going to take a moment here and discuss our process with how we chose, because we had so many great pieces that were submitted. So I had 8 that were a hell yes, and the other 2 that I had to choose, I was like, they were just so, how there was just so much in each of them. And so Lucy was in the same spot. Like we both had like these are the ones, and my method to selecting was creating a flow of voices, because a lot of times when there's readings, there's often a very similar tone. And when there's a similar tone, sometimes people kind of check out. And so I wanted to create it where it was very dynamic. So all of these very strong voices that were kind of just like rolling waves, right? So that was my approach. Because like Lucy said in the beginning, all the work was great. It was really a challenge to select. So that was my approach. What was your approach, Lucy?
So I didn't put the thought you did into it. I had a very different way. I, because I know, being on the other side, we've all been, we all submit our work. And so I've been privileged enough to like be on the other side a couple of times. So I'm always just so like, I want to select every piece. But obviously we know that's not the case. And literally for this one, I wanted to select every piece. So when you get that rejection, just, instead of seeing it as a rejection, see it as, I think this person wanted to choose me, but they only had so much space. And I really want to encourage you to think of your work that way. But what I did was I read each piece like three times, a couple of days apart. And because we had to choose 10, just choosing what my top 10 were for each time I read it. And the same eight kept coming up. And then the other two were like all the other ones. So when Thea had her 9 and I had my 8, I was like, that was kind of like it was deciding those and Thea's 1 extra that she had was 1 kept coming up. So it was for me, it was like which ones keep coming up. And then it was like, okay, Thea. So then those two, then we kind of went through the ones that weren't on our list and we kind of, just talked about them. And that was how we chose them. But it was it was very easy to choose the first 8 for me, but it was like those top 2 because I wanted to give everyone a chance. So I know it wasn't like a methodical thing. It was just like I really went with my heart and what spoke to me. And the work, everyone's work was really beautiful. And for those of you who want to know more about them, our social media manager, Ashton, did a phenomenal job on our Instagram with promoting them. So please check out our Women Who Submit Instagram. And, there's links to their work and, you can, friend them on social media to follow their work along.
I think that the approach was really kind for us philosophical, existential, and and a bit of debate. So, but we spent a lot of time talking about how much we really enjoyed the work, and that we could only select 10, and that's so hard. So just remember to keep submitting no matter where you're going, because, eventually it's a numbers game. Eventually you will break through, and we will be doing other events in the future as well. So keep your eyes open for that.
Yeah, I'm not seeing questions in the chat, but I do have a couple of things I wanted to mention before we close. So the first one is, if you're not a member and you would like to join us, please look on our website. There's a section called Join Us section. And if there's a chapter in your area, reach out to that chapter lead. And if there isn't a chapter in your area and you'd like to start one, reach out to, well, I guess at this point will be Thea. It's all the information is on the Join Us section. And again, like I said, check out our Instagram page so that you can follow these amazing writers who had, who did such a beautiful job with these readings. And then the last thing is, if you are in a position to donate to Women Who Submit, we are a nonprofit, so you will get a tax deduction. So take advantage of a good tax deduction by the end of the year. All of our programming is free for members, and a bulk of our funding for this year, including this reading, came from grant money that may no longer be available. So Sochil will post the link to our CEFI on the chat. But please, if you're in a position to do donate to us, because like I said, everything is free for our members. Sochil, is there anything in closing you'd like to say? Just making sure I didn't miss anything and just going through the chat to make sure there are no questions.
You didn't miss anything. I just want to say thank you, Lucy, for leading us and guiding us over the last couple of years as our chapter lead. You will still be here. You're
I'm
still
still here.
but you have done, you've done so much for our community. I really appreciate you. Thank you, Thea, for moving into that role. And also, I mean, I loved that people were shouting out their editors, their publishers, their chapter leads. I love that I see a few of you here, the chapter leads. I don't know everyone, but I see you and thank you for the work you do and to help all of us stay connected. Ramona, Joy, I'm sorry, I'm gonna forget people's names. Judy.
Judy, Elise.
So thank you for the work you do. It's just amazing. And all the readers, thank you for your reading. What powerful, powerful, beautiful. I get emotional.
I know,
Just
I'm a little teary-eyed too. So
beautiful readings. Thank you for sharing your work with us. Thank you for being in community with us. You make us, you give us the strength and the energy and the love and the life we need to keep this going because it really is all volunteer. As the director, I don't have a director's, I don't get paid, I don't get paid. And neither do Lucy and neither does Thea. We do this as a volunteer for the love. So hearing you all in your work and hearing what you're passionate about and hearing you advocate for your communities and hearing you advocate for other women, non-binary, marginalized voices is just so powerful. So thank you. And I think that's all. Thank you all. This was a beautiful reading. I'm going to stop recording.